Welcome to another edition of 9 Weeks, your unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast. Alongside the NESCAC man, Dave Bagatelle, Chris Grace back with you. And we have a great show for you. We will recap last week's action. We will preview this week's action. And we're also going to catch up with Trinity head football coach Jeff Devanney, as well as Amherst sophomore signal caller Marek, as the Mammoths are off to a great 3-1 start. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to catch up on from last week and a whole lot to talk about for this week. Dave, it's great to be back with you. As always, we went into the week thinking this might be a week where we're going to see a little bit more separation, and we definitely saw some of that. The cream is starting to slowly rise to the top in the NESCAC, but I think the most appropriate place to start is just to go back and look at last week's results. First things first, let's just go from the top down. Williams went to Maine and took on the Polar Bears, and the Eafs jumped out to a big lead early and were never really in jeopardy as they took care of business, and they improved to 3-1 on the season.
Yeah, no, by the way, thanks, Chris. It's great to see you again. Hard to believe after this week we'll be halfway done with the season, but anyway, we'll talk more about that later. Yeah, Williams, I think you and I both picked Williams to win this game. They jumped out to a 35-0 lead and frankly didn't look back. I would call that, we use the term on this program, workmanlike an awful lot. And it was just one of those games. Williams, typical, over 200 yards rushing. Again, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Ho-hum, Owen Johansson, 2 more touchdowns. John Orris, 144 yards rushing. I think the thing I was watching is against Bowdoin, Williams went back to their bread and butter. They went back, they ran the ball an awful lot. They only threw 12 passes on the day. Frankly, they didn't really have to pass, but the Williams offensive line has just been playing at another level. They don't give up a lot of sacks, and they're opening up a lot of holes for their running backs. Meanwhile, the defense is playing really well. I watched some of this game. Just really great job by the front seven on both sides of the ball for Williams, both offensively and defensively, really, in my mind, dominated the line of scrimmage. Great job by Williams. Williams stays at 3-1. They hold serve. They're in the mix of things, right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think something that needs to be pointed out, because you're just almost never going to see this with the conventional offense, is that Williams currently has the first and second leading rusher in the NESCAC.
Yes.
Owen Johansson leading all NESCAC players with 451 yards rushing on just 47 attempts. He's averaging 9.6 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns, which is ridiculous for a quarterback. But John Orris, second leading rusher, averaging 97 yards a game. So they are averaging over 200 yards a game with 2 different ball carriers carrying the load. Certainly a team that's built a little differently than most of the other teams in the NESCAC. And I think they are probably the closest. They're probably the one team in the NESCAC, Williams and Wesleyan, that have a real case to be 4-0, but they are not. They're 3-1. That will obviously keep this a wide open league, but just another really solid performance for Coach Raymond and the Eafs.
And just a word on Bowdoin. Bowdoin, they're playing a lot of youngsters. Sort of reminds me of what Bates did a couple of years ago. There's a lot of freshmen, sophomores out there, particularly on offense. And they started 3rd different quarterback for the year in 4 games. That's not really recipe for a lot of success. They turn the ball over 4 times. It's really tough to win games when you're throwing 3 interceptions, you're fumbling the ball. And so they're struggling a little bit, but the way they play that defense, there's always that chance that they start forcing turnovers, start getting sacks, and who knows what can happen down the road for Bowdoin.
Yeah, for Bowden, it really is just paramount that they're able to create some chaos, and they really have to score some points off of their defense. And it just hasn't been there so far this season. And that was a recipe for success for them last year to give them some advantages in some football games. As we move on, a game that we were both at, the Wesleyan Cardinals took on the Hamilton Continentals in Middletown. And this was a game that was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. And then Wesleyan scored 35 unanswered points in the second quarter. Matt Fitzsimons threw 5 touchdown passes in the second quarter en route to a dominant 56-14 win for the Cardinals. Now, Dave, I'm going to be measured here because I know it is a challenge for you to not be as glowing as you would want to be in this game, but it really was a comprehensive performance by Wesleyan, and they didn't really put a foot wrong offensively. They scored on, I think, 7 consecutive drives, maybe 8 consecutive drives. My math might be off. It was as impressive a performance as I've seen from the Cardinals in a long time.
I think it was 6, actually, but that's who's counting. Yeah, it was the second quarter to remember, probably the best quarter of football that I've seen since Wesleyan beat Williams up there 59-14 in 2013, 2014, something in that realm. Really unbelievable. But the game didn't start out that way, as you said. You and I were on the call of the game, and Hamilton had their chances early.
They controlled the first quarter for sure. They dominated the clock and they dominated the possession in the first quarter.
Yeah, in between, they had a couple of really bad penalties when they got the ball inside the red zone, and then, of course, an interception. Look, Luke Curzon's a very good player, and he was trying to will Hamilton to win, and he hadn't turned the ball over until this game, and Wesleyan was fortunate enough to come away with a couple of really key turnovers. They had a couple of interceptions on them, and Wesleyan's offense, especially their pass offense, but they ran the ball well, was really clicking. Frankly, Fitzsimons pretty much had his way, whether he was throwing to Kelly or to Newcomb or the tight ends. And by the way, hats off to the Wesleyan offensive line, who did a really good job of giving Fitzsimons the time to throw the ball and find those open receivers. So just an all-around really sound performance by Wesleyan. We'll even say their special teams were really good. They seem like they've cured their ills on the kickoff return coverage situation. And Gage Hammond did a great job converting 8 extra points. So 8 for 8 on extra points. So you don't see that all the time in the NESCAC either. And the defense played really well. They gave up a couple of late touchdowns in the waning moments of the fourth quarter, playing the seconds and the thirds. Overall, I thought the defense played very well against a good offensive, good passing team. Hamilton obviously is challenged a little bit running the ball, but they can throw it with the best of them. They were the number 1 ranked passing team in the NESCAC coming in.
Yeah, just to put a bow on this, Matt Fitzsimons, 20 for 23 for 365 and 5 touchdowns. You have more touchdowns than incomplete passes, you're having a pretty good day. And I would say he had a big time day. Dante Kelly, the leading receiver in the NESCAC, just a true freshman, 6 grabs for 125 and 2 touchdowns. We've talked about it. We can continue to talk about it, but we'll move on. Wesleyan's got some weapons, and the big thing in this game was they just completely dominated both lines of scrimmage. And when you do that, you're going to have a great chance to be very successful. And that's what happened here.
Absolutely. Just a word of congratulations to Matt Fitzsimons. Matt was selected as the Gold Helmet Award winner for the week. So congratulations on that. And he was also selected as the NESCAC Offensive Player of the Week. Deserved, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
So far, we're through 2 games. Dave and I both felt pretty confident in the winners of both of those games, and that kind of came to fruition. We moved to I don't know how you want to do this, but I'm just doing it in order, so don't judge me here. The third game, which was actually our game of the week, was Trinity at home against Tufts, and the Bantams jumped out early and really controlled this contest. We're going to catch up with Coach Devanney in a little bit, but it certainly seems as though Trinity's finding their way. They're getting consistent quarterback play from Jackson Carroll, and obviously, if Dante Kelly is 1A in terms of NESCAC receivers at this point, obviously Trinity's got 1B, and O'Brien has been fantastic, and teams just don't have an answer for him, and Trinity's doing enough running the football, and Tufts is still struggling to find their identity offensively as a football team as they drop their second game in as many weeks. And Trinity, with a 41-14 victory, certainly finding their stride as they are in the mix in the logjam at 3-1.
Yeah, just when we were starting to write off Trinity College a little bit, guess what? Here they come. Jackson Carroll is playing pretty well right now. Looks like a typical Trinity quarterback. He had a very, very good game. 2 touchdown passes, threw for 244 yards. Obviously, they've got a bunch of good running backs, Jack Tassoni, Tyler DiNapoli. As you said, Nolan O'Brien, ho-hum, 7 catches, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a very good player. And their defense is playing well. I'm not sure if this situation is a combination of, as you said, Tufts offense is struggling a little bit, and Trinity's defense is playing a lot better. In this game, Tufts actually made the switch at quarterback. They went away a little bit from Justin Keller, who's been getting most of the reps. Played a first year at a New Jersey, saw him play a little high school football. Nate Johnson from Northern Highlands High School here in Jersey, very good public high school program. He was a very good player there. So he played a little bit. So I wonder if we didn't see the future of Tufts football flash before our eyes. But it was another game where Trinity jumped out to a big lead. They were out to 41-7 lead, and Tufts did score a late touchdown to make it 41-14, but really not much of a contest at the end of the day. And of course, this is in the Coop. Tough to win on the road in the Coop, although Tufts has done it. But it's a tough place for opposing teams to come away with wins.
Yeah, and I think the big issue for Tufts is that going into this game, they've been pretty one-dimensional offensively. And when you give a team and a coaching staff like Trinity the opportunity to game plan, they're going to take away the run, right? And they're going to force you to pass. And Tufts just unable to get anything going through the air. And if there is a weakness in this Trinity team, it's in the back end of their secondary. And Tufts was unable to expose that. And thus you see a dominant, convincing victory from the Bantams as they are right there as expected with everything in front of them. They control their destiny moving forward. All right, so the penultimate game of the week was Middlebury hosting Amherst, and Amherst was jumped out big in this one. And like we've seen from Amherst the entire season, they've gotten out to big leads. And in this case, they were not really threatened. They did enough in the second half. They played good football, and Amherst comes away with a very impressive 27-17 road victory over the Panthers.
Yeah, they jumped out to that 27-3 lead. Middlebury made a little bit of a try at a comeback in the fourth quarter. I was dead wrong on this game. I picked Middlebury to win. I thought Middlebury playing at home. They play very well at home. And I think Middlebury is one of those teams they're still just trying to figure out who they are. I know you like to use that term a lot, Chris, but they're catching an Amherst team that is getting they're getting more confidence every week. We're going to have as our guest Marek Hill, and Marek is playing really well. He's playing at a very high level. He didn't have any touchdown passes in this game, but he was 26 of 38 for 245 yards. He ran for 2 touchdowns, not on a lot of yards, but he got in the end zone twice. And here's a guy, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and he's also one of the top rushers in the league. I think he's 10th in running the ball as well. And so he's clearly a dual threat. He gives Amherst something they haven't had in a number of years, which is a real high quality player at the quarterback position. They've obviously struggled there the last couple of years. And their defense the last couple of years has been good. They've just been on the field so much, and they've been put in challenging situations because of all the turnovers by Amherst. Guess what? This year, they're not turning the ball over as much. They have an offense that can sustain drives, and that's helping the defense. And we had Coach Mills on last week. They had some injuries, as every team in the league has injuries, but they're starting to get some of their key guys back. Hats off to Amherst. They're getting it done, and they're another one of our 3-1 teams, and they're part of that four-way logjam at the top of the NESCAC right now.
Yeah, I'm super impressed with what Amherst has done. And you look at what they've done the last couple weeks, it's been very impressive. They dominated Tufts, and then to go on the road to Middlebury and win, that's as impressive of a win as there is in the league so far this year, right? There have been some good wins for some teams, but to go on the road like that and win adds a little bit extra, right?
And they completely control their own destiny, as do a lot of the teams in NESCAC.
Yep.
They still have to play Williams, still have to play Wesleyan, still have to play Trinity. Yep.
That's it. Yeah, and that's the case for almost all the contenders, right? So there's a lot of storylines still to be twisted.
No doubt.
Listen, even the great NESCAC man Dave Bagatelle gets it wrong from time to time, so we'll give him a pass. Our final game of the week was the first CBB game. It was a night game. This one ended past my bedtime, Dave. So when I saw it, it was tied at 6, and it felt like a classic Army Navy game based on what I was seeing in kind of the live updates. But listen, big win for Colby as they win this one in overtime 13-6, and another tough defeat for Coach Coyne and the Bobcats as they see another victory fall from their grasp. But listen, Colby now is 2-2, and Bates falls to 1-3 on the season.
Yeah, so I watched this entire game, and I have not called my friend Coach Coyne yet this week because I know how that conversation's going to go. This was the proverbial how to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Bates was up 6-3 with 32 seconds left, and Colby drove down as they did the whole game. Colby was able to move the ball between the 20s, but once they got into the crunch zone, they just couldn't connect, or they turned the ball over, or there was an inopportune penalty. Bates' defense was playing well all day. They were up 6-3 at that point, 32 seconds left. Bates, or 27 seconds left, whatever it was. And they line up for a 32-yard field goal, which in most college levels, watching FCS, FBS, 32-yarder is almost, what is that, 90, 95%, Chris? But not the NESCAC. They line up from the right hash, and the kicker lines up and pushes it wide left. And of course, there's a penalty flag. By the way, this game was at Bates, and Bates inadvertently lined up on the kickoff, on the field goal in the neutral zone, and got called for the 5-yard penalty. And Colby gets another chance, this time from the 27-yard field goal, obviously a little bit more time right off the clock. And of course, we know what happens. He converts on the field goal, and 6-6, and we are headed to overtime. And Colby scores on the first possession to go up and converts the extra point. Their first touchdown of the game, by the way. They had 2 field goals. And a nice job by Colby, by Miles Drake, their quarterback. First touchdown pass of the year, by the way, for Colby. And Bates gets the ball back, and fourth down they get the ball down. They get a first down on a 3rd and long. They get it down to the 10, comes down to 4th down and throws it in the end zone. Looked like it could have been called for pass interference. There was no flag. The Bates coaches were not happy about that. The Bates fans were not happy about that, but no call. And Colby comes away with a victory, which they were behind the entire game, literally. And it was really, as I said, I watched the whole game. Gosh, Colby comes out on the field and they just look impressive. A lot of big guys, and they've got a lot of size, and they look impressive. But we've seen Bates play how many times? The lunchbox. They take on the personality of their coach, and they played very hard. It was a really hard fought game. It was an excellent defensive battle. Bates offense, frankly, since Sergio Beltran went down, they lost a little bit of that dynamic offense. And Ryan Linsky played well, ran really hard, and they moved the ball at times. You can see that their offense is struggling a little bit, and they played well, but they just couldn't punch it in the end zone. And Colby comes away with the CBB win on the road at night in Lewiston.
Yeah, it sounds like it was quite the tussle there. And unfortunately, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose in those games. And in those CBB
Absolutely.
games, they always seem to come down to the wire. And so now Colby obviously has a leg up on the other two teams to try to get that CBB title. And Colby with the 2-2 record is in that next group of teams within the NESCAC. We talk about the 3-1 teams, but Colby's right there, grouped with Middlebury.
Yeah.
And they've still got a ton to play for, as Colby's schedule was very much front loaded. So they've got a ton to play for, and they've got a big game coming up on Saturday that I imagine one of us will be at.
One of us will be at it. We'll be reporting firsthand from Waterville, Maine. Can't wait for Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So just to recap for everyone that wants to know, how did we do with the picks last week collectively?
Yeah, so I had Bates in that game. So I started out strong. I was 3-0, and my pick on Bates was looking good. And obviously, totally missed the Amherst Middlebury game. So I was 3-2 on the week. And yes, Chris, I know what your record was, but I'll let you say it and rub my face in it.
I got a lot going on, Dave. You have to inform the audience, but we had the first 3 games the same, and then I had Amherst, right?
Yep, you did have Amherst, and I think you had Colby also, right?
Yeah.
So I think that adds up to what? I think that's 5-0. Yeah.
Hey, sign me up. At least one thing went right for me.
Hey, I'm still 14-6 on the year, and I'm gonna have a big bounce back week this week. We'll get to my picks later, but I'm feeling good about this week.
Well, we'll get to your picks in a second, but before we do that, and before we preview next week's games, let us know where you see the hierarchy of the league, the power rankings, if you will, because there's a jumbled mess atop the NESCAC right now.
Yeah, not a lot of changes this week, and as you said, a lot of things are coming into clarity. We have now, instead of 6-3-1, 6 teams with 1 loss, we're down to 4 teams with 1 loss. I don't expect that to change too much this week. In fact, I don't expect that to change at all this week. But we'll get to the picks later. I think we'll still have a 4-way tie for the lead after this week. So I just jinxed somebody, but we'll see what happens. But my number one ranked team, just to be very clear, Chris is not part of the NESCAC Man Consortium on the rankings, so he absolves himself. He's a neutral reporter on this.
I just don't always agree, and I don't want to be a part of it.
I think this week you're going to agree, but we'll see. So our number one ranked team they were number one ranked team last week, is the Trinity Bantams. Just based on strength of schedule, I think that Williams win was deciding factor to me. Although if Wesleyan keeps winning games by 40, 50 points, we might have to rethink that. But our second place team, or my second place team right now, also at 3-1, they were also ranked second last week, is Wesleyan. I think they nudged up a little closer to Trinity based on the game they played against Hamilton. See how they do this week against Colby. We'll talk about that game later. Williams is my third ranked team, also at 3-1. They were ranked third last week as well. Our biggest mover of the week and moving up into the fourth spot, also at 3-1, is the Amherst Mammoths. Last week they were ranked sixth. They're now fourth. Our fifth ranked team, and this is where we start getting into the 2-2 teams. Our fifth ranked team, there's 3 of them, by the way, are the Tufts Jumbos at 2-2. Last week they were ranked 4. Middlebury is my sixth ranked team, also at 2-2. They were ranked 5th last week. And staying in the 7th ranked spot is the Colby Mules, who are also 2-2. They were ranked 7th last week. Our 8th ranked team, almost, but not quite. They were our 8th ranked team last week as well. Now we're getting into our 1-3 teams, is the Bates Bobcats. They lost a tough one to Colby, as we just discussed. 9th ranked team is the Hamilton Continentals, also 1-3. They were ranked 9th last week. And our 10th ranked team, the only team that has not won a game yet in the NESCAC, at 0-4, they were also ranked 10 last week, is the Bowdoin Polar Bears. So those are the rankings this week. And also just to highlight the players of the week, the NESCAC Man players of the week. Our offensive player of the week was the quarterback for Wesleyan, Matt Fitzsimons. The defensive co-players of the week were George Popadoupou from Williams. He's the defensive back there, and Ryan Rosich, who plays linebacker for Bates. And our special teams player of the week from Bates, also from Bates, is kicker Marcus Ruiz. So those are our rankings for a week number 4 and our players of the week. So back to you, Chris.
Well, there you have it. There's our full wrap on week 4. Dave and I will take a quick break. We come back. We've got some great interviews for you. And then don't forget, later on this episode, we'll get you ready for week 5. It's 9 weeks, your unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast. Welcome back to 9 weeks, your unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast, alongside the NESCAC man, Dave Bagatelle. I'm Chris Grace, and we are very pleased to welcome back the head coach of the Trinity Bantams, Chef Devanney, coming off of a emphatic victory over Tufts. The Bantams riding a 3-game winning streak after a rough start to the season in Maine, and back-to-back wins, coach, against really good teams. You've got to feel pretty good about where you guys are at right now as you're developing as the season goes on. It seems like you're really starting to find your way and find your identity as a football team.
Yeah, I would say that I've been very pleased with the fact that we've improved every week, and we still have so many areas we can be better at. But our biggest frustration as a staff last year was we had a team that just didn't improve. We were the same team in week 9 that we were week 1. And that's very frustrating as a coach. And this year you can see market improvement each week. If we can keep doing those things, I think we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, every week the points keep going up and up. We'll see if that happens again this week. Obviously, you came into the season when we had you on in the preview, figuring out who your signal caller was going to be. It looks like you've settled in with who that's going to be. He's playing very well. He seems to be improving every week. Talk a little bit about the offense and your quarterback in particular.
Yeah, so as you guys know, we were doing the preseason thing. We didn't even know who the starter was going to be. And then it was going to be Cam Holland, and then Cam got hurt in the preseason. And so then it was Jax, and Jax didn't play very well in the first half of the Colby game. So we replaced him at halftime, and we didn't get good quarterback play in the second half of that game either. So we went back to Jax in week 2, and he played much better against Bates. And then against Williams, he played really well. And then even last week, he even showed more improvement, hitting some check downs, making some really good decisions when plays weren't there, just throwing the ball away. And those are things that if Jax can just keep making those improvements with his arm talent, he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, and you're talking about as your team continues to evolve and grow, you have some familiar faces, but obviously quarterback is the most important position in the room. Talk about, if we could backtrack a couple weeks, his effort against Williams in a game that you guys jumped out to a lead and then had to come back on a couple different occasions and find ways to win that football game. What were your perspectives watching the film and watching that game, not only of your quarterback play, but as your team as a whole? As that seemed really the game of the year so far in the conference?
Yeah, I think my assessment after that game is we played really hard and we got a bunch of very tough kids. That game was very physical. We are not the smartest team in America. We make some dumb mistakes in all 3 phases, but our kids play so hard. And then our offense had gotten into a lull in the middle of the game, and that was one of our big themes last week, was to be more consistent. We went 3 and out, 4 of 6 drives in that middle of that Williams game. But then they showed their toughness and their grit, because they responded when every time Williams took the lead, we went down the field and responded offensively. And Jax made some big throws, none bigger than obviously the first play of overtime, where he had to slide a little bit to his left and threw a perfect ball into the corner of the end zone. That's one of those plays that'll go down in the Trinity Williams historical rivalry things, with the Joe Clark 4 touchdowns and the James Lane throw to Mulaney in 1991. Like, those Trinity Williams games have been phenomenal.
Yeah, Coach, we tend to talk a lot when we get a chance to speak with you, which we always appreciate. Talk a lot about your offense and your quarterbacks, because you always seem to have really good quarterbacks and really dynamic offense, great playmakers. Obviously, Nolan O'Brien is one of those guys, but I always feel like the real story is the Trinity defense. The Trinity defense over the last 20 years has been really good, and it just doesn't seem like it gets enough love. And you're playing at a very high level this year. Obviously, Williams' offense is really good. It gave up some points, but every other week you guys have been really stout. So, and I know you replaced a lot of guys this year too. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your defensive philosophy, and how your defense always seems to be so good in Hartford.
Yeah, I mean, our philosophy, and thanks for pointing that out. When I my first maybe 7-8 years as the head coach, the defense dominated. And then Mark Melnitzky's done such a good job with our offense. We've broken so many school records the last 5 years. It had unbelievable players, obviously, like Spencer Fedor and Sonny Puzo and John Girard and Sean Clem, Chapuris, not an offensive. And this year, Nolan O'Brien category, just unstoppable kind of forces. But defensively, we're actually doing, it's very interesting because 2 of our best defensive players are out for the year. And we've got 2 kids playing significant minutes for us on the D line that were linebackers 2 weeks ago. And not only are they playing, they're playing really well. And we've had to, so you ask about our philosophy defensively is get a bunch of tough kids that run to the ball and will play really hard, and then make it so that you're playing a defense that fits their strengths. So actually in that Williams game, we played an angle front that we haven't played in 15 years. It was like a front that we used to use in the 2008, 2009 years. But we had to play some D linemen that were linebackers the week before. And so we said, we're just going to line you up and head up, and we're going to tell you to go right or left. And just go right or left as hard as you can. And just run into whatever you run into. And so we've always done that. Lou Acrulo and myself have always changed what we've done to suit the strengths of the players that are on the field without trying to sacrifice what's happening on the back end. Because on the back end, if you start to confuse things on the back end, you give up big points. So even though we went into that angle front in the Williams game, the guys on the back end were playing all of our 3-4 rules. We didn't change anything from their perspective.
You talk about, again, being frustrated last year, your team didn't improve, and it seems like there are clear improvements from week 1, obviously, for you guys. Where are some areas that you're still looking to clean up? I know you mentioned maybe some mistakes that have happened in 3 phases, but if there's a position group that you think there's the difference between you guys winning another NESCAC championship and not, who do you think really needs to step up for your team to get where you want to be?
I would say that's pretty easy. We need to get better at the safety position, particularly in pass coverage. Some of the big plays we gave up to Williams, I would say 2 of the big plays we gave up were really good individual efforts by Williams kids. The other ones were just off absolute busts by us in the secondary. So we can't make those mistakes. Tufts never really tried to throw it over our heads, so I don't know if we improved or we just didn't get challenged. We definitely need to improve special teams. Lou and I have been here doing this for 25 years together, and this year is the worst we've played on special teams through 4 weeks. So we actually added 15 minutes of practice every practice this week, and all we're doing is special teams techniques. And then on offense, we need to get more out of our tight ends. Our offensive line is coming along. We've got some injuries there. We're having to play a freshman. The receiver core, obviously, with Pat McCaffrey out for the year, is a little bit depleted, so we're waiting for guys to step up. And Darrison Hooper did that in the Williams game, and Nick Barons did that last week on a big 3rd down play in Tufts. So we need some of those other pieces on offense, but our tight end play has been really subpar. So we got to get better at that spot.
Yeah, speaking of defense and passing the ball, this week you travel to Hamilton, right? You face one of the better quarterbacks in the league, Luke Curzum. We had Luke on the podcast last week. Phenomenal young man, by the way. And obviously he played at Wesleyan this week, and he can throw the ball around a little bit. Talk a little bit about the going on the road to Hamilton. It's a little bit of a trip, and they obviously do throw the ball, and you talked about that being a concern.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge that we're looking forward to. Curzum does a really good job. He'll throw the ball on time, and he actually the last couple of weeks has made some really good off-platform plays. So that's just a challenge for us and for our kids and on the back end. I think we're talented back there. I think we're going to do some things schematically different this week, just based on who we're playing, because Hamilton doesn't really run the ball very successfully. So it's a different game plan for us. You'll see some nickel packages and things like that, which obviously we played Bates, which was all, you got to stop the triple. And then we played Williams, which we thought was, hey, we just got to stop 15 from running it. And then he threw the ball all over the place on us.
Right.
And then we played Tufts last week, and we didn't think their quarterbacks were a threat in a sense. So we were able to do some things that we won't do in this week's game. This week for us is all about stopping 15.
Look, Coach, we know obviously all these weeks are short. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time to connect with us. We know there's a lot of big games still ahead on the NESCAC schedule. I just got one last one for you and I'll let you go. Dave and I were having this conversation a week ago. Through 3 weeks, there wasn't an unbeaten team in the NESCAC. Can you ever remember this league having this much parity, really from 1 to 10?
No, but I was talking to someone about this the other day. Everybody can say the NESCAC is different. It's very different. This is a weird year for the NESCAC. I think there's 6 teams that could beat each other on any given Saturday. And then you have Bates beat Amherst, which I think Amherst is really good when I watch them on film. But I would say you could say the same thing about all of college football.
Yeah.
Look at Texas and Penn State. They were ranked on 1 and number 2, and they're not even in the top 25. Look at what Brown just got murdered by Harvard and then went out and beat a top 10 team in URI the next week. So it's a crazy year. It's not just NESCAC. It's all of college football. It's just crazy.
Even the NFL. Look at the Ravens, right?
Yeah. Ravens, look at the Jaguars.
Right.
Oh, the
And
Patriots.
look at the Jets. Who had the Jets 0-5?
I think that was a no-brainer.
Who didn't have the Jets 0-5? That's the question.
Yeah, you can't pick your teams. Can't pick your teams, unfortunately. Look, Coach, we appreciate it. We wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to catching up with you down the road.
All right. Thanks for all you guys do for NESCAC football.
Good luck on
Absolutely.
Saturday,
All right.
Coach.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Coach Jeff Devanney, the head coach of the Trinity College Bantams, back with more 9 weeks, your unofficial NESCAC podcast right after this. Welcome back to 9 weeks, your unofficial NESCAC football podcast alongside the NESCAC man, Dave Bagatelle, Chris Grace with you. And it is our pleasure to welcome in the sophomore signal caller for the Amherst Mammoths, coming in at 3-1 on a 3-game winning streak, playing as well as any team within the NESCAC. Marek Hill is with us. Marek, first and foremost, it's great to have you on our podcast. We're really pleased to get to put a face to the name, first time meeting you. First and foremost, one thing that we've noticed from afar is we saw you get an opportunity last year. We talked to Coach Mills about it, some learning curves, some bumps in the road, but it certainly seems as though all that experience you got in your freshman season is starting to pay dividends as you're starting to find your stride, and your team is really finding their stride as you guys are playing really great football.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be on here with you guys. Yeah, the work speaks for itself where we're at right now. Really proud of the way we bounced back after week 1. Would love to have that game back. I'm sure throughout my 4 years, I'm going to have a lot of games I want to have back, but I'm really proud of the way we attacked that week, and we just found a way to get better. Last year, going into this year's an 8-game losing streak, I felt, especially losing my first 4 starts, gave us a chip on our shoulder. And then we just went to work in the offseason, retooled the offense, just getting our guys the ball in space and letting them do what they do. And then the defense is doing what they can do.
Talk about the resiliency. You talk about the fact that you guys lost your last 8 games after starting 2-0 last year. And then this year, the season, big game against Bates. You start the year, you're playing great football. You're in control of the game. You guys let that one slip away. What was that week like? How did you guys figure out a way to get it back on track? Because that can get away from you pretty quickly, especially in a league as competitive as this. What was the locker room like? What was your role in this? And how did you guys stay the course and keep the grind, if you will, and make sure that it didn't happen again?
Yeah, it started on Sunday. The day afterwards, we just went and looked at the positive stuff we had done in that game, scoring 23 points in the third quarter, holding them pretty much scoreless up until the end, causing fumbles and turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. They just came in to focus on what we do well and learn how to play from ahead, and how, instead of just learning not to lose, how to win a football game, especially once you get in that second half, knowing when, especially for me, knowing when to throw that ball away or just take the check down and keep the clock moving instead of take a bad sack, add momentum. Our coach always talks about the 3 main drive killers that killed us last year, which were penalties, a sack, and delay a game. Those 3 things will kill a drive instantly. So just working on limiting our mistakes, letting the clock run, playing complementary football, and then having meetings with Mills talking about why he loves to play the field position game and how much of an impact it really has. Just tune in for Hamilton, and then we just been on the roll from there.
Yeah, you guys are off to a great year, a lot different than the last couple of years for Amherst. So congratulations on that, Marek. It's been great getting to know you a little bit over the last couple of days via text. So thanks for coming on. You're from Illinois. We were talking a little bit earlier, a big White Sox fan.
Yes, sir.
How's Marek Hill end up at Amherst College in Amherst, Massachusetts? How's that happen? How'd that go down?
Really didn't start playing football until about 6th grade. I had a dad play college football. He played at Ball State. He was a quarterback himself. And then my grandpa played for the Bears. He was a DB and kick returner. So I'd always been around football, but as you guys said, a White Sox fan, first love was baseball. And then had to feel like it's like the most Amherst thing ever is I had to convince my parents through a PowerPoint to let me play football.
I guess it
From
was a
there,
good PowerPoint.
I think, yeah, just looking at the concussion rates and then just saying like I might as well. Went to a really good Catholic school. I know it's not like a lot of the prep schools out here, but it was some really good football. Didn't really get to see the field until my later years, so I just skipped a lot of the D1 team's radar. I feel like every NESCAC kid is going to say this, but was trying to end up at the Ivy League for football. I was spotted at the Columbia camp, Amherst, and then Coach Grove, and he's no longer with us. He's at Carleton. Coach Baylor were just in constant contact with me, reaching out to me through my senior season. Came down to here, like just going to walk on at Northwestern, and I'd much rather be at the place where they cared and I could get a really good education. I had the chance to do something special and be the first Black QB to ever play here. So I feel like it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Wow, that thought didn't even cross my mind. Now that you say it, that's pretty incredible. You think about all the history at Amherst. That's wild. I'm not even prepared for that. I wasn't even ready for that. But just speaking about your journey and talking about convincing your parents with a PowerPoint in sixth grade, that's some next level thinking. So obviously you've got a good head on your shoulders.
Tried it.
You've also got some things that you can't teach, which are great physical gifts. And I know that Coach Mills saw that last year when he put you in, probably maybe before you were ready.
A little bit.
But those things, no one's really ready. You're only ready once you get out there. You can't replicate that in practice. How much more comfortable are you within the offense right now than you were, say, even the tail end of last season?
I say miles ahead. Just first started on my first semester in college, trying to get my footing there, getting to know people on the team. And I was thrust from the 5th on the depth chart as a freshman to just the 2nd against Middlebury. I played a little Wildcat. Bowdoin to go like a 1-year mark this week. I was a Wildcat QB. That was my first time really seeing the field as a quarterback. And then just from there, starting to understand how we've shifted our playbook from more in the huddle to more of a signal spread look is helped me out a little bit because that's what I ran in high school. And then just getting to know what my receivers like. Coach Grove, my QB coach, always likes the term KYP. Each receiver has strength and weakness to just play to their strengths. And then from there, it's just reps. Like you're saying, no one's really ready till you're ready, but in practice, those reps really matter. And we've done a really good job, especially in camp this year, of just stacking reps, getting 1% better every day, and then just working on stuff that we'll see on Saturdays and communicating about that.
Yeah, you're playing great. You're one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I know that's not what it's all about. It's about getting W's. It's not about, your own personal statistics. The quarterback, a lot of that weighs on the team, avoiding interceptions, making the right decisions, of course. So
I'd say wins our quarterback stat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially now at all levels of football. It's very important. It's always been important, but even more so now. But I don't know if you know this, but Amherst hasn't started a season 4-1 since 2019. You guys are sitting at 3-1. You got a big game against Bowdoin this weekend. It's a little bit of a trudge to get up to Brunswick. I'll be right behind you, headed to Waterville. Talk a little bit about preparation for the week and the game this week, and how the team's feeling about playing the Polar Bears this Saturday.
You guys spoke to Coach Mills last week. I'm sure you spoke. It's just the same thing every week. Is just go back to work. He loves the word grab, or the term grab an oar. So it's just, what can you do right now, especially week 5 in the season? Roles are starting to get set. What can you do right now? How can you provide help? Bowdoin came to our place last year and kicked our butt. Plain and simple. Offense, defense, special teams, just wiped the floor with us. And right now, where we're sitting at right now, 3-1, obviously would love to get to 4-1. That's a big task ahead of us. This is a big midterm week for all the guys. So it's all just about just controlling what you can control right now. Those 2 hours and 30 minutes you have of football a day, just make it completely about football. And then really getting to communicate this week. They do a lot of stuff on defense. They talk, they communicate. So just love to send blitz. They've got a dynamic edge in 11. It's probably going to be on NESCAC. So it's just learning how to control him and then just doing more of what we do. I feel like if we can do what we do better than the defense, we're going to be just fine. So
You talk about that too. Provides a unique challenge within the NESCAC. Their blitz package is different than just about anyone else. And even though they maybe are rebuilding a little bit in terms of some of their personnel they're trying to replace, from a quarterback's perspective, it's not a comfortable week watching film and trying to get ready
No,
for something
that
like that.
defense is just about the same. We're returning 8 starters on defense, and would love to talk about their offense, but my job is just control their 11 guys on the field.
So I imagine that your primary focus is to see what's coming before the snap and make sure you're taking care of the football. Because when I look at your stats going into today, a couple things jump out at me. First and foremost, obviously you've been effective on the ground, 4 touchdowns, about 40 plus, around 40 yards a game running the football. But I think perhaps most impressive to me is 7 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions, throwing the football, really doing a good job of taking care of the football. That's got to obviously be a focus for you going into this week.
It's got to be. Always just trying to see how can I steal yards to the quarterback position. If they're going to send that blitz, we do a good job of getting the ball out on the perimeter, and then just taking our one-on-one matchups when they're calculated. I feel like last year I had a lot more trust in my guys, mainly because I didn't have trust in what I was doing in the system, and I would just give my guys a shot, and that would lead to a pick. So it's just taking my shots when they're called, really understanding the protection, and understanding where my hot throw is this week. My coach has done a great job of getting hot throws into almost pretty much every concept we have. So this week more than ever, it's pretty important to get to those.
Yeah, so just shifting gears a little bit. Last question for me. Obviously, you're at Amherst College, you're a student athlete. Who knows, maybe you'll be playing on Sundays someday, but at some point you'll have to enter the workforce. What are you studying academically, and what are you thinking about doing after your playing days are over?
Right now I'm studying economics. I do a little bit in psychology and Black studies as well, but mainly economics. I'd love to go into finance right out of college. So working on an internship for that, like a lot of NESCAC guys are for this summer. Don't know if I want to do that full time, but I'm also really interested in foreign policy. I took a class last semester in the spring on international relations, and I just fell in love with it. So I also just love to travel and have new experiences. So at some point, just if there's a way to shift from finance to foreign policy, that'd be ideal.
Look, Marek, I can speak for both of us saying that it never ceases to amaze me when we talk to the student athletes in this league, how impressive they are. And you're as impressive as anyone we've spoken to. It's great for us to get to know you. And now we know who you are as a person, and we'll be able to pay even more attention to things you're doing both on and off the field. So thank you for taking some time, and good luck this week as you get ready for a big game in Maine. And we'll keep focusing in on the Mammoths, because the Mammoths are doing some things this year and we've been impressed. I know I've been impressed, and best of luck this weekend, and hopefully we can catch up with you down the road.
Sure. Hopefully it's not the last time we see each other. So have a good week. Have a good week, guys.
Absolutely. Good luck.
That is the signal caller for the Amherst Mammoths, Marek Hill. We'll be back with more 9 weeks unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast right after this. 9 weeks, your unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Game Day Sports Programs. Transform your game day experience with Game Day Sports, your ultimate partner in celebrating athletic excellence. They collaborate with teams and parent groups to create memorable keepsakes for every fan and player. From personalized parents' lanyards to giant heads to senior banners that cheer on your favorite player, their custom print pieces capture the spirit and passion of your team. Their beautifully designed programs are packed full of essential information that every fan eagerly anticipates, making them cherished keepsakes for supporters and players alike. With over 25 years' experience, trust Game Day Sports to bring your team's story to life in vibrant print, ensuring every game day is one to remember. This episode of 9 Weeks NESCAC Football is sponsored by Sloan Walsh LLP. On the gridiron, victories come from preparation, smart play calling, and a defense you can trust. For 91 years, Sloan Walsh has brought that same approach to the legal field, especially when the game is toughest in insurance disputes. They know how to protect the end zone, move the chains, and deliver results when it matters most. From complex litigation to safeguarding what matters to you, their team is built to go the distance. Sloan Walsh LLP, trusted counsel, championship effort. Visit sloanwalsh.com to learn more. Welcome back to 9 Weeks, your unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast, alongside the NESCAC man, Dave Bagatelle, Chris Grace back with you. It is time to preview Week 5. And just looking at the slate, Dave, there's a lot of games here where I imagine you're going to have some pretty large unofficial point spreads, but
Yeah.
last week we've been spoiled. There's been some big matchups early on. This week, just based on the records, not so much, but we're still going to go through and preview every game. First one on the list, we've got Trinity traveling to Hamilton. We talked to Coach Devanney earlier on, and we got his thoughts on some of the challenges that go against facing a Hamilton team that lives through the air, with a Trinity team that maybe is a little bit challenged in the back end of the secondary. But based on what my eyes saw last week, I think Hamilton's really going to struggle on both lines, giving Kurzweil enough time to throw the football. And I see Trinity romping here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, look, I'll give Hamilton, first of all, it's home. So that if they were playing in Trinity and Hartford, forget it. This could get very ugly, but they are playing at Hamilton, and the home game always helps. And Hamilton can throw the ball. He's talented. He's got a couple good receivers. The question is, can his offensive line give him enough time to throw the ball? He wasn't really sacked last week, but he was running around a lot. There were Wesleyan had a lot of hurries. They were chasing him a little bit, and he throws the ball on the run, even against the grain, throws the ball rolling to his left. If Hamilton's going to have any chance of this game, Luke Curzon's going to have to play just out of his mind. Career day, as you said, the only thing that Trinity hasn't done as well doesn't mean they're last in the NESCAC and they're fifth in the NESCAC and defending the pass, but Williams saw something there and they threw the heck out of the ball and they had some success throwing the ball. And there's a team that isn't really known for throwing the ball, and Hamilton is. Trinity also leads the NESCAC in sacks, so they're going to put pressure on Curzon. They can run the ball well. Hamilton obviously is susceptible to the run. I'm going to take the party line. I think that the Bantams win pretty convincingly here. I'll say Hamilton will manage to get a couple scores. They're going to make it interesting. They'll probably score one touchdown earlier and then one touchdown in garbage time. But I have Trinity winning this 44-14. And if I were setting the point spread, I'd make the team from Hartford, the Trinity Bantams, a 31-point favorite. Have them give 31 points to Hamilton.
Yeah, that's funny. Sometimes we think alike. I had 41-14 written down here, so we're pretty much aligned here.
Yeah.
Probably the second biggest game, I think, in terms of there being a real big chance for a potential, I don't even know if you call it an upset, but is going to be in Waterville with Wesleyan traveling to Colby. Obviously, it's a very long trip, and this is a Colby team. They're the only team that's beaten Trinity. They're coming off a big win against Bates, and one thing that Wesleyan hasn't had to deal with this year really is pressure on their quarterback, and Colby has the potential to make Fitzsimons as uncomfortable as he's been at any point this year. I tend to think that if Wesleyan is able to eliminate mental mistakes and take care of the football, they should find a way to win this game. But also, you look back to last year, and Colby had every chance to win that game, and Wesleyan ended up winning in overtime, and they needed a late drive to force overtime, and then obviously had that kind of miraculous quarterback sack where the ball popped up in the end. Wesleyan took it back to the house for a ridiculous walk-off overtime victory. But Colby has some confidence playing against Wesleyan. I think this game is going to be a lot tighter than maybe the point spread in this one.
Yeah, Colby has always played Wesleyan tough, but Wesleyan seems to, at least in the last 14 years, last 14 times they played, Wes has been very fortunate. Wesleyan's won 13 of the last 14 times they played. Wesleyan has won 6 of the last 7 times the teams have played in Waterville. The lone loss was 2 years ago. They lost to Colby in overtime up there. Last year, of course, the win for Wesleyan was at home in overtime. That was a heck of a game, right? I think that was Jake Edwards' strip sack kind of thing, and then he outran everybody to the end zone in overtime to seal the win. That was an unbelievable ending. So I don't think this game is going to be that close. I think Wesleyan just has too many weapons. 2 years ago, it was pouring out. The weather factored into that to that game, and Wesleyan had a field goal block. There were a lot of ways that Wesleyan could have won that game, and I'll never blame the weather. But this year, the weather's going to be perfect for Maine in October. It's about as good as you could get. It's going to be in the 60s. It's going to be sunny. That definitely helps Wesleyan. Their defense is playing well. It's a situation like we talked about earlier with what's going on with Bates. The offense has been turning the ball over an awful lot. They've been putting the defense in tough situations. The time of possession hasn't been what they hope it to be. I think if Colby is going to have a chance in this game, they're going to really have to cut down on those turnovers. And they got to get some semblance of a running game going. They have not run the ball particularly well thus far this year. Obviously, they've got an experienced quarterback in Drake. They've got a very good receiver in Nye, but they've got to be able to mix it up. They got to be able to get him the ball. And look, Wesleyan has, as you've noted, some pretty dynamic players on offense, and the quarterback is playing with a lot of confidence. He leads in NESCAC in passing efficiency, leads in NESCAC in passing TDs. He's only thrown one interception. He's making a lot of good decisions. And he was a new starter, and now he's the guy, and this is his fifth start, and he's got a lot of confidence. He's coming off being the NESCAC Offensive Player of the Week. So I have Wesleyan winning this game 27-10, and I have Wesleyan as a 14-point favorite in this game, Chris.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? I think there are really only two scenarios in this game. I think if Wesleyan takes care of the football, I have 28-10 circled. But I could also see a scenario where Colby kind of muddies the waters, and we're looking at a very similar game to what we saw last year. But I tend to think that Wesleyan has shown me enough so far this year that they will get the job done. But I will not be surprised if this is a game that my co-host might be sweating a little bit in the fourth quarter. But I think Wesleyan gets the better in this matchup, just based on just the talent on both sides of the football. But talent doesn't always win games. Excuse me. There's a reason why they play them out.
Absolutely. Look, it's, as we've said before, these next 2 weeks for Wesleyan, and they can't look beyond this game, obviously, are classic trap games, right? The back end of their schedule is loaded with Amherst, Williams, and Trinity. 2 of those 3 games at home. Wesleyan completely controls their own destiny at this point, but you got to take it one game at a time. And look, the last couple of years, they've had games like this and they've lost them. The hope here, I would say, if Wesleyan is they had their one stub your toe game, and they got it out of their way, which was against Tufts, where nothing really went their way. Their own doing, by the way, not blaming it on anybody else and not making excuses. But then they still could have won that game. So I think they learned a valuable lesson. I think a lot of the guys on this Wesleyan team were a part of some of those teams where they had last year against Bates, the year before against, I think, Bowdoin, or against Colby, actually. So I think there's a lot of long-term memory there. And the thinking is that they're not going to let that happen again.
So that game's at 1:30 in Waterville. Another game taking place in Maine. We talked to Marek Hill earlier on, and Amherst travels to Bowdoin. I don't see a scenario where Amherst doesn't win this game pretty convincingly, but again, there will be a game this year where Bowdoin's defense is able to create some havoc and create some turnovers and play from ahead, which would really change the way that they're approaching things. But I've been a believer in the Mammoths this entire season. I'm not going to change my tone here. I think Amherst probably is a 2.5 touchdown favorite here. Dave, what is your official number?
So I have Amherst giving 17. So
hey, 2.5. All right.
Pretty much right on. I have Amherst winning this game 31-10. Here's the thing with Amherst. So Amherst, they've been decent, as we've talked about. We talked about with Marek Hill. They've been decent defensively last couple of years. But now their offense is 4th in the league in scoring. They're putting together drives. They're not turning the ball over, which is huge. Marek Hill stirred the NESCAC in passing TDs. He's only thrown 3 picks. Demetrius Smith has run the ball well. And look, they're playing a young Bowdoin team they play that high pressure defense. And unfortunately, this year it just it's not clicking the way it's clicked we've seen in past years. They're ninth in total defense. And more importantly, usually they're in the middle of the tier in defense, but they generate a lot of sacks, they generate a lot of tackles for loss. This year they only have 5 sacks in 4 games, and they've only forced 2 interceptions. It's not quite working the way it's worked in the past years. The good news is the offense does seem to be getting better. The offense for Bowdoin has actually gotten better every game. They've scored more points. The amount of points they're scoring has increased. The bad news is their defense has allowed 27 plus points the last 3 weeks. I just think the way Marek Hill and Amherst is playing right now, and they've got a lot of young guys on defense. And look, Coach Mills is, as you've called him, the dean of coaches in the NESCAC. I think he'll figure out a way to exploit the Polars' defense. God knows he's seen enough of them. And I think they win this pretty handily and stay in the hunt for the NESCAC title.
We agree. So our penultimate game that we're going to preview is going to be another night game. The Bobcats playing their second consecutive night game, this time on the road in Medford as they take on the scuffling Jumbos, who jumped out to a 2-0 lead, 2-0 start, and have dropped their last 2 games in convincing fashion. This is really a rubber meets the road kind of game. One of these teams' seasons is going to go in a very different direction based on the result of this game. It really is a huge game for both teams, despite the fact I don't think either one of these teams has a chance to really compete for a title. I think they both have a chance to have a successful season where they're in or around 500. This game is going to have huge implications for that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be Colby Bates last week. This is going to be a messy, low-scoring game, defensive battle. Both teams in their own way have struggled on offense. Bates right now is 8th in the NESCAC in total offense. They're primarily a running team. They run the flex option. They're only averaging 2.5 yards per carry on the season. And being primarily a running team, they've been in a lot of, because they're not getting the push on first, second down, they've been facing a lot of longer third down situations, which has forced them to be, they're last in the NESCAC in third down at 29%. And the top teams, the Wesleyans of the world, are almost at 60%. Tufts also hasn't gotten it going yet offensively. I will say Jumbos do have running back and Christian Shapiro. He's 6th in the NESCAC in rushing. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think they are playing at Tufts. It is a night game. It's a great atmosphere. I've been to a number of those night games at Tufts myself. So that is what flips it to me, having the home field advantage. And U Bates is coming off a tough loss at home to Colby. That was a tough one to swallow. I think that Tufts wins this something like 17-10, and I've made Tufts a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Unfortunately for the Bobcats, if you're running a triple option, a flex option, whatever you want to call it, and your quarterback's not really a rushing threat, which is what they're faced with right now, you really have to hope that you're getting more out of the passing game. And so far, it just hasn't been there since Beltran got hurt. Perry has not been able to produce a lot through the air. And just looking at the numbers, in particular last game, just 2 carries on the ground. And when you take the quarterback out of the option, it really makes it a lot easier for the defense. And I think Tufts has athletes on the field, right? Coach Devanney will figure out ways to get athletes to football, and I tend to agree with you. I think Tufts comes away with a victory here. I think they get back on track as they try to bounce back from 2 consecutive disappointing losses. But I like the Jumbos at home here by maybe 10 points in Medford. So our final game that we're going to preview is in Williamstown, and it's the Eves, who are 3-1, taking on the 2-2 Middlebury Panthers. And this is a classic game, Dave. When over the last couple of years, you say Middlebury, maybe it's just not their year, and then they go on the road and they tell you not so fast. And we've seen it at Trinity twice in the last 4 years. 3 years, whatever it is. We've seen it time and time again with the Panthers, but they're going to have a tough task. We talked about Williams. They're as balanced of a team as there is in this league on both sides of the football. They get great line play, obviously a dynamic rushing team. The question is, will Middlebury have enough answers for Williams? And I think if Middlebury is, it's going to have to be Brian Moran's had a nice season. They're going to need him to do even more. They're going to need the problem with Middlebury is they're just not getting shot plays on offense. They're moving the football, but they are not getting easy touchdowns. And I think Williams showed against Trinity that they can be susceptible to some big plays. But if Middlebury is going to have any chance of coming away with a victory on the road, they're going to need some big plays from their offense.
Yeah, Williams is playing at a very high level offensively. They're first in the league in total offense. They're second in scoring, and they far and away lead the NESCAC in running yards per game, averaging 200 yards per game on the ground, which is almost unheard of. 6 yards per carry. They've scored 10 rushing touchdowns, which, by the way, if you just look at their rushing touchdowns compared to other teams' total offense, that would place them in the middle of the pack in the NESCAC versus other teams. They've thrown the ball, as you said, surprisingly well. I think that starts and ends with their offensive line. They've only allowed 1 sack all year. They don't throw the ball as much as some of the teams in the league, but still, through 4 games, only allow 1 sack. Kudos to those big guys up front who are obviously getting a good push to run the ball for 250 yards a game. And they've got a couple guys in the top among, as you said, first and second in rushing in the league, and John Orris, the running back, and Owen Johansson, the quarterback. So no doubt they're going to score points. Middlebury, I would say, is mediocre on defense. Here's the thing on this game, and I think this is going to be the key to the game. Brian Moran's a good quarterback, and he's an experienced quarterback, and he's got a good receiver in Michael Hannon. Hannon is third in the NESCAC in receiving. And Moran has been around, and he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You can throw on Williams. They're 9th in the NESCAC in pass defense. And I think and they've got a good running back who can also catch the ball out of the backfield. So I don't think this game's going to be a walk in the park for Williams. I do think Williams will come away with a win. By the way, Middlebury has had Williams' number in recent year. And the reason I always quote these streaks is they matter. These coaches, they know each other. They play against each other. They game plan against each other. So these histories of teams playing against teams matter a lot in this league. And Middlebury has won 8 of the last 10 over Williams. And Middlebury hasn't lost to Williams since 2021. Middlebury does a good job against Williams. I don't think Middlebury beats Williams this year, though. They're playing at Williams College. Williams is on a roll. They're 3-1. And I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch. I have Williams winning 24-17. I have the point spread set at Williams -6, but I see this as a touchdown game, and Williams comes away with the hard-fought W. By the way, a loss for Middlebury, 3 losses pretty much would knock them out of the NESCAC title hunt with 4 3-1 teams still in the mix.
Yeah, brought up some good points there. I do want to point out one thing. You did undersell Williams' rushing offense a little bit. They actually averaged 250 yards rushing a game offensively, which is more than 100 yards in front of the second place team, Trinity, running football, which is just ridiculous. As a team, they've rushed for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in 4 games. So
it's crazy. It's impressive.
Pretty spectacular. Middlebury does a pretty good job against the rush, however. They're only giving up 2.9 yards per carry on the ground this year. You mentioned Mike Ahonen, who's a really good receiver. A lot of yardage, no touchdowns, though. And Brian Moran, who's got some pretty good numbers, but again, they've struggled getting the big play. And I can respect the history, and I can respect the program that Middlebury has, but I think in this season with this roster, I think flukes aside, injuries aside, I think if Owen Johansson stays healthy, I think Middlebury's going to have a long day. And I think Williams wins this game maybe by 2 scores.
Okay. It's fair enough. That could happen.
But again, Saturday afternoon, we tune in and Middlebury has got the football down by 3. I'm not going to be shocked if it's the 4th quarter. That's just the nature of these rivalries. So listen, we're at the midway point of our podcast and of the season, and there's a lot. It's really exciting when you look at the way the schedule is backloaded, as all these teams that we've talked about, for the most part, with the exception of Williams playing Trinity, every other team in the top half of the conference still has to play against each other. So it's going to be a pretty exciting second half of the season. And who knows? I imagine we'll see at least one result this week that will surprise us. But Dave, any final thoughts?
No, next week we'll give our midseason grades and look back at this week. I agree with you. There's always going to be something to surprise us. This is an NESCAC after all, so there'll be something that that neither you or I thought was going to happen is going to happen. But if things hold serve, this could be one of the more exciting ends to an NESCAC season with all these teams in the mix, and they're all playing each other the last couple weeks of the season. So could be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. For our guests today, we want to thank Marek and, of course, Coach Devanney for joining us. And for the NESCAC man, Dave Bagatelle, I'm Chris Grace. Please, by the way, if you haven't, click the subscribe button, leave some comments below. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to know what you're looking for. We want some participation in this podcast. When I go to do the games, people are coming up to me. I know you're listening and you're watching, so please help support the podcast any way you can. Spread the word, share it with your friends and your colleagues. We want this to be a community podcast for everyone who loves NESCAC football. But for now, it's time to sign off. For Dave, I am Chris. Until next time, you have been watching and or listening to 9 Weeks, your unofficial NESCAC football podcast. Until next week, so long, everybody.